Good evening, everybody. This is Pete Morris on the Comanche Zoom. We are doing a Zoom for December 10th, and our show tonight is Doug and Mike from SysGen talking about the 3100 Autopilot. It is going to be full of information about the abilities of the pilot, of the installation tricks and stuff like that nature, and all of the possible updates that are going to be going on. So have at it. Here we go with the usual who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
All right. Dan Homiser, Kenosha, Wisconsin. And I'm flying a 250.
Mark Zeller, I'm in Salina, Kansas, and I've got another 250.
Mike Ellis, I'm in between those two in near Moline, Illinois. I got another 250.
Rich Bergman, El Cajon, California.
Ed Cullen, South Lake, Texas.
James Coleman, Harbor Springs, Michigan, 400 model.
Russ Pasco, Twin Comanche 89 Yankee down in Central Florida, or actually Panhandle, Florida.
Michael Saperton, Phoenix, Arizona, Comanche 250, 1963.
And Pete Morris and Danielson, Connecticut with my 250 1963.
Good year.
Yeah.
Don Pitts, Lovington, New Mexico. I've got a 66 260B.
This is Ed Hash in Phoenix, Arizona. I also have a 59 250. It's been in my family since it was brand new.
Mike Newman, also a 59 Comanche 250, and I'm in Western Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh area.
I'm John Stark. I've got a 1962 180. I split my time between Columbus, Georgia, and Panama City Beach, Florida.
Send it out to everybody. It's minor. The meeting was actually adjourned at 21:41, not 20:41.
Go ahead, anybody jump in with who you are, where you are, and what you're flying.
This is Scott Parcell, Houston, Texas, 62 Comanche at 250. Can anybody hear me? This is the first time I ever done this.
Yep, we got you. No problem.
Oh, okay, cool.
And welcome.
Thanks.
Ken Schaefer. I've got a 260C model, and I'm in Annapolis, Maryland.
Coy Murray. I've got a PA24 250, Guntersville, Alabama.
How many 260 Charlies did they make?
They made about 225. I have a, it's Miller, and I have a 69 260C.
This is not ATC. This is like the local flying. You can go ahead and key the mic.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ray Fay, and I'm from Madison, Wisconsin, actually Middleton, a suburb. I fly a 260B model, which I love, like we all do, and hate to see cold.
Ray, good to have you. It's good to have you back. In fact, welcome. And everybody jump in and say who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
How was your trip to California, CJ?
Oh my goodness, it was amazing. So just very briefly, everybody, I flew the Comanche 180 that I'm plane setting out to California. And sorry for the lack of video, I'm in a low bandwidth situation. So first flew from Vermont down to Florida, and then out to California, where it is actually part of the Autopilot approval process for the Trio Pro Pilot. So I'm pretty excited that we're getting all these autopilots for Comanches. I think it's going to make us safer. And I don't know if you guys have all noticed, but the price of our airplanes is going up. And having 3 choices of autopilots is not going to hurt our fleet values at all. Anyways, past meteor crater array, managed to survive the last day where it was segments for turbulence, icing, embedded thunderstorms, low level wind shear, and every other thing that you can see in the list of things that you shouldn't go fly little airplanes in. But sat down on the ground while all that passed overhead, and then flew and just saw the shining Pacific as I came over the Sierras. It was amazing. Thanks for asking. Everybody, hop in, just say who you are, where you are, and what you fly. Well, with 44 people in the room, if you guys aren't careful, I'm going to start calling on you. So here we go.
Rick tried to say something, but his mic's muted. Rick Goodman.
And cool. And who is that?
It's okay. We're unmuted now. It's Rick Goodman. I fly a Comanche 1958 Comanche 250 PA24. It's actually it's out in Cooking Lake, Alberta right now, having some work done on it. So it's I haven't been in it in about 3 months. So.
Rick, thanks for being here and good to have you. If you haven't worked on it, this is kind of the perfect time to be thinking about what you're doing while it's open, yeah?
Well, it's got the interest in this seminar presentation was the Stec 3. It's got a 2 in it, and I'm interested in going to the 3rd dimension and see what we can
Very
do.
cool. Yeah, these guys will be talking. It's they're the 3100 is generally offered as a 2-axis, but the 3rd axis is an option.
Excellent.
And then who was it that was helping Rick?
Oh, that was Mike Ellis. I just saw his lips moving, and I knew he was trying to say something, but his mic was muted is all.
Yeah.
Cool deal, Mike. And did you already introduce yourself? I came in a couple of minutes late.
Oh yeah, most of us have before you came in.
Whoa.
Pete took us right down the path. So
I'm trainable.
You're late to the party, CJ.
I know, but I'm like, usually we can't get through 47 pilots in 11 minutes. So I'm actually really impressed.
Well, it was the covered bridge joke that did it.
Oh, and that's it. Everybody just climbed in and went rapid fire, huh?
Yep.
Like New York ATC. Awesome.
Okay.
Well, just well, if everybody's already introduced themselves, then I have one quick report. So we've got 3 autopilots, obviously, that are happening. And I don't know if you all saw that Garmin had finally pulled. So there's all of these autopilots have had a Comanche theme to them. You know, the Comanche drivers have all been helping get the people offering them to us organized. So I talked with Dynan at Sun and Fun, and I have some information on that later on. I don't want to get in the way of people now, but it looks like, you know, they'll be contacting us. They were interested a year ago in possibly moving forward. And for those that noted that the Dynan Skyview system, which is a panel system, initially we thought that would only really work with the Dynan Autopilot, but in fact it will drive things like the Trio Pro Pilot. It has the same vertical and horizontal hold information that they all use, which is the AirRank 429 and the RS-232 for horizontal and vertical information guidance for your autopilots. So I'm going to shut up now and let everybody else chat. And I'm checking this chat window, everybody.
Ready to send it in.
And for everybody, because I came late to the party, I actually can't see the chat window stuff. They only show up once you come in. So if there's anybody that had a question for me, you'll have to copy and paste it back into the chat window.
Hey, Jay, just this is Miller Einzel. Could you give
Welcome.
us a briefing on your trip to Florida this last weekend?
Yes, yep, sure. So we did ComancheTown at the Sun and Fun Holiday Fly-In. And a couple of highlights. So the main things are that this was because of COVID, every air show around the world has been shut down for 2020. And the importance of this one for the general aviation community was it was the first attempt to do an event of any size whatsoever in an outdoor setting so that people could socially distance and be safe from each other. It was well attended. I think that I hooked up with the chairman and CEO came over to ComancheTown to visit with us and see how we were doing. And that's the second largest air show in the world. So for Comanches to get that kind of support and attention is meaningful. Their chief marketing officer and their chief financial officer both helped. Their chief marketing officer helped to organize a space just for Comanches. And there were more Comanches than any other type of aircraft that made it to the Sun and Fun Holiday Fly-In. So although it was a smaller ComancheTown, it was a lot of fun. And because we were so well represented, our type really stood out. So we made good relationships with the chief marketing officer, Greg Gibson, the chief executive officer, Lights Leanhouts, and this time the chief financial officer, who at the last minute negotiated us a group buy special on Sun and Fun 2020 t-shirts, the fly-in that didn't happen. So every single person, we had 25 people that found out about it, that all marched over in a big group of Comanche drivers and bought t-shirts. While we were there, all of the three-letter alphabet soup agencies presidents got together for a GA town hall. And what was wonderful is that virtually everybody made the effort to go and show the flag at the town hall, so that Mark Baker, the head of AOPA, and the heads of EAA and of Sun and Fun, so those are the three largest GA organizations at the moment, all got to see quite a lot of the Comanche drivers. If you would like to see that, it is apparently on YouTube. It was broadcast by Sun and Fun Radio, which is SNF Radio. And for those of you who are willing to hold your nose and get onto Facebook, if you do a search of SNF Radio and then click on that, you'll get to the list of their broadcasts. And it's in reverse recency of order. So the GA town hall meeting is probably down there about 10 topics. Things covered that are going to be of interest to everyone include the state of GA insurance and We will be sending out a report next week with a list of the topics covered, so that, and a link to the replay of that GA Town meeting. But the one that I think is probably of critical interest to all of us is insurance. And they discussed the fact that, and this is covered in our Comanche Zooms on insurance, and we'll be coming back to this in the future because it's clear that we have, 25,000 hour pilots that can't get insurance on their twin Comanches. It's a very odd year. The message is keep the faith. The insurance industry is in kind of a dire period. There is only one insurance industry, and our little airplanes are lumped in with United Airlines, and and it's only a $1.5 billion industry. And although $1.5 billion is a lot of dollars in insurance, it's tiny, which is a little, kind of stop and think about that, everybody. So what Baker said in particular is that they've been working hard on this one, and that they are expecting something to come out for older pilots in particular in the next month or two. And the last thing I want to add on that subject, because I went back and re-listened to the broadcast, was something that we have also said. They went over and over and over the older pilot statistics, and they are not showing up as risks. We are not showing up as risks. They said older pilots are slightly more likely to leave the tow bar on and do a prop strike or ding a wing on something, but the major, big payouts where you have a catastrophic problem, he said those are not in the statistical data at all. And I concur. We've done those analyses as well, and so that's very, very good news. So everybody keep the faith. It looks like they're aware of this problem, and we should be seeing some good solutions coming. Any questions? Feel free to jump in, just like ATC, if you got a quiet moment.
Yeah, CJ, you'd mentioned that they have special, did you get any sense of what they meant by special products for older pilots? Is it they won't cover you at night or something like that, or you're only allowed a passenger? Did you get any kind of feel for it?
No, they were. That's a great question, Mike. They were not specific. And what I do think is, because so many of us were there, if we wanted to gather a couple of questions and then send them in, I bet we'll get some answers pretty quickly, as well as they feel able to answer. And so that's a great question. Do you want to throw your question into the chat window? Because I'll carry it forward. I mean, I could actually text it over to the executive team at Sun and Fun, I think, and they might know where we could insert it. If anybody else has a better idea about how to go in more directly, I'm all ears. I'm just, at this point, it's like, let's just start taking these steps and getting our answers. I know this is urgent because I know there are people who are considering selling airplanes that they've owned for decades because the insurance situation is so bizarre right now. And for those who love the airplanes and do want to keep flying them, part of the reason I wanted to make sure this message got out is because it does seem like, the cavalry may be coming. And we've got some of our own cavalry that we're looking at creating as well, just in case theirs gets delayed in the form of an insurance co-op.
CJ, how are they defining older pilots?
Mark, I think that they're defining older pilots as those 55 and older. And I'm basing that assumption on the same studies that I think they were looking at, where they were trying to, and the one that they particularly, I believe, referred to was the one when they were trying to determine whether pilots that were flying Part 121 had to retire, what age they had to retire.
Good, I got another 3 weeks.
Well,
I'm great.
Yeah, 121 guys have to retire at 65. I'm a product of that from July. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, in that case, my condolences, because I know that
it means I get to fly my airplane more often.
Yeah, the reason I'm giving you condolences is because when I'm hearing from people that had to retire from the majors during the COVID period. Normally, you guys get to like fly anywhere you like, and there's like a party because you're retiring from a long career. And I've been told by people that basically it just that was it. They just were like, okay, where do you want us to send your check?
Exactly. Yeah, there was no bath from the the whole water cannon from the fire guys. That's not happening. You don't have a whole lot of choices on where you get to go. There's not a whole lot of people waiting for you at the other end, so it's less than what it once was. How about that?
Russ, I am glad to hear your experience kind of matches, although I'm very sorry about it. But what I'm figuring, based on the amount of partying that I know some of you guys, you corporate 121 types can do, I'm expecting you're going to have a really big party when this all eases off.
Eventually, that is the hope. You guys are all invited. Come on down. We'll go to the hangar.
Okay, while you guys
You're
are
up.
talking, I'm going to put up the help wanted thing so we can have that in the background. This will not interfere with your talking, so don't worry about it.
And for those who have joined recently, please jump into any quiet moment and say who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
Hey, CJ, Ed Cullen, South Lake, Texas, 250 Comanche. Have you heard anything on Trio's deal where they said they were going to hope to submit to the FAA by mid-December?
Yes, I'm expecting that those guys will probably be on and listening, and we're going to give them their own time to talk. But in short, they've got their design finalized and they're ready to test fly and have their DAR look. And I got a somewhat frustrated update that their DAR had chosen to go on vacation during the holidays. How dare they? So their really drop dead deadline for submittal of the complete package is January 15th, at which point anybody who wants to can say, I want my deposit back. And it does look like they'll hit that.
Super. Okay. Thank you.
I want to
You're
break in
welcome.
again here. Robert Klein has a little thing he wants to show here, and there it is. So Robert, do your thing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Robert Klein, and I started to fly back in 1974 from the Fort Monmouth Army Flying Club. And one of my instructors, not my principal one, is the gentleman on the left, Norwood Thomas. He's a retired master sergeant now. On his 96th birthday, he went and jumped out of an airplane. It's the dual jump that you see on the right. And he is a D-Day veteran. And he came, we met at a time I had just gotten in the Army. I was a brand new second lieutenant. I didn't know much about the Army, and I didn't know much about being a young man in that sort of organization. I cannot tell you cannot underestimate the degree of influence that he had on me, both as being an officer and as being a pilot. A month ago, he had a stroke. He's now confined to a wheelchair. I have not been able to talk to him. I can't go and visit him. What I'm asking each and every one of you to do is to go buy a get well card and send it to him at the address you see on the left side. Norwood is an absolutely incredible guy. His discussion of how the engine works and manifold pressure and gauges. He taught me more about lazy eights and navigation. I just cannot underestimate the value that this person has. And I would really appreciate for him to get as many get well cards to this D-Day veteran as we can get. So I'm asking that from the group. Thank you.
I'll add to that, our fly-in that we were scheduled for the first one of this past year was going to be at Williamsburg, Virginia, and he was going to be there and speak to us for about a half an hour about his experiences both with D-Day and with being a pilot trainer. And we missed out because of COVID. We had to cancel, and it's really too bad. Okay, anybody need that address still, or move on?
Any chance we could post it to the chat window?
Yeah.
I'll type it
on.
into the chat room.
Super. And just, yes, what Pete said, Robert and I did a really long cross country together about a year ago, and his stories about this gentleman were amazing. So really looking forward to sending him a card, Robert, and I'm so glad that you came on and let us know about his situation. I'm posting a note to Facebook as well with a copy of you and your request.
Thank you.
Well, that is a sobering note, but it's also a reminder that we can really help our fellow aviators. So that's what we're about. And that's what this is for. So if you've got, this is part of why we're here. Everybody jump in and say who you are, where you are, and what you fly.
Yeah, this is Rich Bergman. On my 70th birthday, I had a good buddy of mine. He's retired SEAL Team 3B, which turned into SEAL Team 6. And he was a halo jumper. For people who don't know, high altitude, low opening. And I mean low opening. And high is 32,000 feet out of the back of a C-130, fully equipped with a dog strapped to him. And so anyway, he dared me, actually my other half, he had her dare me to say, you flew all these stupid planes and everything else. Have you ever jumped? And of course I said, why would I jump out of a perfectly good airplane like all of the rest of us say? Anyway, I went to the flying club down here in South San Diego, saddled up in a big Cessna, and I was told to go to Angels 13, which is 13,000 feet with no oxygen. And on the way out, strapped to my real jumper, yelled Geronimo as loud as I could, like the Navy SEALs do. And we opened at 5,000. It was one of the thrillingest things I ever did in my life. And I could do that, but at over 70 years old, parts break one hell of a lot easier than they used to. But I did it, and I'll never be sorry. And he said, you're a pilot, you want to fly this thing? And he put my hands on the controls, and he says, take us down from 5,000. And I flew it down. He says, remember, don't stall it. This isn't a rigid wing. So anyway, took it down, went into the downwind, crossed into the crosswind. And as I turned on final, I gave him, I said, it's your airplane. And he says, no, you're doing good. And I said, no, take the plane. And after we got down, he says, how did you know where to make the turns and everything like that if you've never jumped? And I said, I was watching the altimeter on your left wrist. And it was beautiful.
I could imagine that jumping behind Omaha, or whatever, which beach was it, Kenny? Anyhow, on D-Day, it would have been a little bit different.
Yeah, he ended up jumping in the middle of the night. So, and navigation was not precise. So there was like a big field there. And he went back for I believe it was the 75th anniversary. And the French farmer that owned the land was considered to be a real jerk and grumpy and not open to anybody. They knocked on his door and they told him they had a D-Day paratrooper from the 101st that landed in his field. Would he mind opening up the gate? And he came out and opened up the gate, and Norwood got to go walk in the field that he jumped in on D-Day.
That is remarkable. What a beautiful story. Robert, I'm so sorry. We've got people already saying they're going to send get well cards, and we'll all be rooting for him.
Yeah, it's really tough. He is just, I've been in contact with him. I'll make this story short. When I was assigned to Germany, and to Korea, there's two people that I would call. One was my mom and the other was Norwood. He just meant that much to me.
Wow. And I guess it's, yeah, and just a quick, is it Norwood that had met somebody and then re-met her many years later?
Oh, yes. This is a nice story. Perhaps you remember, it'll be, I think 2 years ago this February, there was a thing in the newspaper about for Valentine's Day, a World War II soldier meets his, the girl that he was dating back in England before he had to go for the invasion. It turns out that this woman was in New Zealand, and when their sons managed to connect, Qantas Airlines ended up flying Norwood and his son Steve all the way to New Zealand. And there was a, on the video, it was Norwood Thomas that got to see the lady that he hadn't seen in like 50 years. And they still remembered each other and so on. So that was really pretty neat, and that was set up through their sons, and the airlines gave him a free airline ticket round trip from Norfolk to it was either New Zealand or Australia and back. So that was really neat.
Okay, it is that time, and I'm going to again mute everybody and go to a speaker view. So we get one shot at the thing, because Doug and Mike are both online, and it's time for the presentation. This is what we're going to be doing. The topic is the autopilots for the imminent STC for 3100 STC, and Doug Tellef and Mike Demeter from Genesis are doing the talking. You have tons of questions. They're going to answer them. And with that, I will give it over to them.
Okay, let me, can everybody hear me all right?
Yep.
Okay, if you'll just bear with me here, I can get going.
For those who aren't sure, that's Mike Demeter.
Hi, everybody. Oh, hold on one second here.
You may have to double click things to get them to work.
Ah, there we go. Okay, let's go back. There we go. I'll have the presentation this evening will be, I'll say mercifully brief. I've pared it down to about 230 slides, so we should be able to breeze through them pretty quickly. I'll get into, I'll just touch on some of the features of the 3100 pretty quickly. We've had some new developments on interfacing and interconnecting that I'll talk about, and then talk about our STC, which I'm sure everybody wants, is why everybody's listening. So the 31, or myself and Doug Tellef are on the line. Doug used to be in sales, and then he went back to field service and piloting, and in fact has been the pilot going through the STC process. So he's got a lot of Comanche 400 experience now, I'd imagine.
Yep, glad to be back with you guys again, and yeah, love flying the Net 400.
As I said, well, I'll go through a quick description of the system, although I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Like I said, we've developed some new system configurations that should be interesting, and then talk about our certification. The 3100 is as far as the Comanche goes, the PA24, it's a 2-axis autopilot pitch and roll. It can interface to digital or analog systems. We have it certified in well over 100 makes and models of different aircraft, and it is upgradable from any Stec installed Stec autopilot. It's a departure from many of our traditional autopilots in that it's attitude-based and not rate-based. There's a internal AHARS in the unit that serve as its pitch and roll references. Depending on the exact configuration, it requires minimal equipment, and as time goes on, more and more installations are requiring very few interfaces. And as I said, it can interface, although it can interface with legacy analog avionics and advanced EFIS systems. It all depends what you have installed in your aircraft. The basic system controls are Autopilot and Flight Director. The mode controller also controls the yaw damper. The yaw damper is not available on the PA24. It has built-in Flight Director capability. It has built-in altitude pre-select capability, and it also incorporates control wheel steering and go-around functions. Where it says may require a converter in the asterisk, some of those capabilities are going to be dependent on the other equipment that you have installed in your aircraft. Lateral modes are what you'd expect from a full-featured state-of-the-art autopilot. It has roll hold, heading hold, nav and approach modes, GPSS modes, and GPS approach modes. The vertical modes are pitch, attitude hold, altitude hold, vertical speed, indicated airspeed hold, glide slope, and then the vertical in a GPS approach. Unique among a lot of autopilots is the automatic pitch trim is standard on all 3100 systems. It also, some of the newer features, it has a straight and level mode. That's the LVL button you see next to the Stec kind of front and center there. And pressing that will bring the aircraft back to straight and level flight. The autopilot does not have to be engaged for that function to work. The autopilot master has to be turned on. Obviously, the system has to be turned on, but you don't have to be in any particular autopilot mode. When you press that button, the autopilot will turn on, bring the aircraft back to pitch and level, and put you in pitch and roll attitude hold. Envelope protection in the active mode, that is when the autopilot is engaged, and it will correct and help prevent underspeed, overspeed, and roll exceedances. The passive envelope protection mode is used with Flight Director, and it will give you voice and tone enunciations through your headsets to help prevent underspeed, overspeed, and attitude upsets. The system is really pretty simple. There are, I'll say, 3 or 4 basic components. The primary one is the programmer computer, and it performs a lot of functions. It's the mode controller, obviously. It's your mode enunciator. It has the altitude pre-select controller in the upper right where it says up, down, and select. It has the Flight Director outputs and the internal attitude source. It is also, the main computer and driver for all the servos. The other 3 components are the roll pitch and pitch trim circles. These are connected directly to the programmer computer and driven using a pulse modulation technique. One of the things that we've done when we design this is we use our existing servos, and that allows upgrades from Stec autopilots that are a little bit less expensive and a little bit quicker. Some of the optional equipment, and these would be used primarily with an analog flight deck. We can supply an air data computer, the Flight Director interface, or a heading converter that allows the interface to quite a variety of different HSIs. Some different configurations. Probably the most basic is the standard analog 6-pack. It does interface with this system. However, there's some things to keep in mind. In order to use the altitude pre-select, the supplied air data computer needs a barrel correction signal. Now that would typically come from an encoding altimeter. The flight director interface requires that interface box that I just mentioned before. If the altitude pre-select function is available, the targets are set, the altitude target and either the vertical speed or indicated airspeed targets are set using the select and the up-down buttons that you see in the upper right-hand corner of the 3100. We do strongly recommend that if this is an installation that's in your aircraft, that you at least upgrade to an HSI. Getting both heading and course to the Autopilot, to the 3100, enables intercept functions and a few other things that are quite useful. Another very popular configuration is with Garmin G5. Basically, the Garmin G5 in the HSI position with a GAD29B emulates KI525 HSI. The flight director is not available because the G5 in the ADI position does not accept external flight director inputs. With I believe it's called a GAD13 and an OAT probe, the G5 can also supply air data to the 3100. And in this case, just like in the other analog systems, the altitude pre-select targets are set using the knobs on the 3100. This was a relatively new interface that we've been working on for the last couple of months. And as we get through other aircraft, we're adding that to those STCs. One that's brand new, and we did this in conjunction with the PA24 STC, is interface to the Garmin 275s. To use the 275s, it has to be a dual 275 setup. One of the 275s is set up as a primary HSI with the Autopilot interface, and ADAHRS options, those can be specified from Garmin. And the second 275 is what's called a primary ADI. The vertical speed and indicated airspeed targets are set on the 3100 using the up-down button. The altitude target is set on the 275, so there's a altitude bug that you can use. Flight director is also displayed on the 275 ADI. The PA24 is the first aircraft that has this added to its STC. And we will, as time goes on, be adding this to all of our STCs. Doug, I don't know if you want to comment on how it flew or how you like flying with 275s?
Yeah, absolutely. And just a slight correction there. The primary one is the attitude indicator. That's the -20 model, which is the ADAHRS plus AP. That'll be the attitude indicator one. And then the -10 is just the ADAHRS model, the little bit cheaper one. That's got your HSI, moving map, traffic, weather, CDI, HSI, a bunch of different functionality. Initially, when Garmin announced it and looking at it, I thought, that's going to be a lot of information cluttered on a little screen there. But I've been impressed, and I'm not a Garmin salesman, but I'll tell you, I really like that GI 275. It was very easy to fly behind, very clear, played the data out real well. And when combined with the 3100, it flies like on rails. The GI 275 puts out the same labels in the same way as a G500, 600 TXI does. So it makes for a great interface.
Right, it's a completely digital interface with these instruments. So it's literally state of the art. As I said, the PA24 was the first aircraft that we did the STC with and verified this interface, and you'll be seeing it on all of our other STCs shortly.
Will it operate with the Garmin G3X as well as, or is it just the GI series and GT series?
The Garmin G3X, as far as Autopilot's concerned, is very similar to the G5.
So it can't take a flight director then or anything like that?
I do not believe so. Doug, you may.
Yeah, I don't believe the G3X at this time will accept external flight director. It's similar to the G5. You need the GAD 29B, and I'd highly suggest doing the GTP 59 and GAD 13 Garmin OAT probe so that you can pull the air data instead of having to install a Sandia air data computer. It makes for a little bit better interface. And,
all right, awesome.
And that gives you your altitude pre-select without having to install a baro corrected altimeter like you previously had to do in the past. So it's pretty good savings as well. But we have had, I think, a couple of customers do the G3X, but most commonly it's been the G5 and then now the GI 275 going forward.
Okay. Aspen EFD 1000. It's right now, all of the functions are available except for indicated airspeed. The Aspen as it exists now does not output the indicated airspeed label. We can supply an indicated airspeed kit, which does make up for that. But as you'll see on the next slide very shortly, that might be unnecessary. Altitude pre-select is again available using the select and the up-down keys on the 3100, and heading is set on the Aspen. The other thing with this unit is flight director is available, but does require the interface unit that I pointed out before. We're in the certification phase of the Aspen Pro Max PFD. We've gone through all the engineering and a lot of the test flights. The system works great. To my knowledge now, the software is at Aspen getting certified in the unit. It's really interesting because for all this stuff to work together, the software has to be certified in the Aspen unit. We have to have an interface that's certified, and then the interconnect has to be certified. So we're going through all these certifications right now. The best estimate I have right now that this could be done towards the end of Q1 or early Q2. And it's going to be a really slick interface. It's completely digital. You can set all of the altitude pre-select, indicator airspeed, and vertical speed targets using bugs on the Aspen. The autopilot modes will be displayed on the PFD, so it's really going to be a very nice interface.
Yeah, that the versions, the pre-release versions that I've flown of it are really nice, and they work very well. One thing that Mike did mention there is you can set the targets on the Aspen, but a slight difference between this setup and say a GI 275 or the G500, 600, TXI, all the Garmin screens, is you can set the targets on either the Aspen or the 3100 and they will crosstalk. It'll communicate between the two. Whereas on the Garmin screens, you need to set the available targets on the Garmin screen, and then the 3100 will read that. On the Aspen, they will actually crosstalk. So that's a pretty cool little feature.
G500, 600, all of the, it's a complete digital ARINC 429 interconnect. So all of the features on the 3100 are available. As Doug just pointed out, autopilot mode enunciations are not available with Garmin equipment. Flight director is available. I didn't change this Garmin 275. It's a little bit beyond test right now. So that's been approved. Here's a slide that talks about the setting the altitude pre-select targets. We recommend setting them using the bugs on the G500. When it sends that information to the 3100, where in this case, where you see the 12,500 set, you'll see a series of dashed lines. If you press the select button on the right side, it will display the altitude target that you set on your G500 or 600. So now the spot everybody's been waiting for. Where are we with the STC? It's imminent. We've been waiting for 2 weeks for it to get done, and we're still kind of in a holding pattern with just some final things. We actually are getting started with the next step of the program, which is PMA. It's called Parts Manufacturing Authorization, and that's the authorization from the FAA for our factory to start producing, in this case, 3,100 kits for the PA24. So that's we're starting with that. That is usually a 3 to 4 week process, but with the holidays coming up, I'm guessing that it's probably going to be maybe a 6 week process for us to get that done. So we're on the cusp. We've been waiting, and I know Pete, we talked last week because we were hoping it would be done last week. We pushed it back a week. We were hoping it would be done this week. We're like right there, if you can imagine the frustration. But we'll be there sooner than you think. In the meantime, though, what we're going to be doing is extending our extended warranty offer. So until for the next month, I'll say at least the end of December, any orders that we get will still be eligible for our extended warranty offer. That's 3 years on new equipment and 2 years on any installed servos. So if you're doing a completely new installation, your whole system will have a 3-year warranty. If you're upgrading from an existing Stec Autopilot, there'll be a 3-year warranty on your controller and a 2-year warranty on your installed servos. So we're extending our extended warranty offer. Another thing I'd like to bring up, and we had talked about this for the couple times that we've been here, is the Twin Comanche STC. We are now accepting pre-orders for the 3,100 on those aircraft. The STC will cover both or all the PA30 models and the PA39. We'd like to get this done quickly, so we need 15 pre-orders, and we're accepting them through March 31st. So that gives us almost 4 full months to get orders. We have 3 or 4 on the books now, so we've only got 11 or 12 to go. You can contact me, or if you get in touch with Doug will forward it to me. And I'm putting that list together. If we can get that done sometime in the first quarter, we could have autopilots for the Twin Comanche available. Second quarter would be the project, beginning of third quarter, September of next year, possibly. So that's the direction we're headed. The price for a standard full system, the 2-axis applies both to the Twin Comanche and the PA24, $19,995. 3-axis, the 3rd axis will be available on the Twin Comanche, $24,995. And like we've said, our 3,100 kits come with everything you need to install them. If you have an existing Autopilot, Stec Autopilot, the upgrade price can range anywhere from $99.95 if you have a 55X with auto trim to like $13,995 if you have a single axis system, Stec 40 or a 30L. Typically to upgrade a system 50, a 30 or a 50 to the 3,100 would be $11,995 because typically those systems don't have an Stec trim system. And as with the PA24, all new systems that are pre-ordered will have a full 3-year warranty, and upgrades from an existing system will have a 3-year warranty on the new equipment, the controller and the trim servo, and the install servos are warranted for 2 years, no matter how old they are.
And Mike, I just want to jump in here and kind of circle back around on that extended warranty. one of the things, we'd be normally rapidly approaching the cutoff date for the extended warranty offer on that PA24. But we wanted to make sure that because the Comanche Zoom group has been so big and welcoming us here, I think this is now the third or fourth time we've been on, we want to make sure that nobody misses out. So we made sure that we were able to extend the opportunity to get your order in up through the holidays, as Mike mentioned there. So that's something just for the Comanche Zoom. We want to make sure nobody misses out. So you do have an opportunity still to get those orders in and still take advantage of that extended warranty.
Thanks, Doug. So why the 3100? It is a state-of-the-art digital autopilot for GA aircraft. Pitch trend standard. We can interface to pretty much anything that you have in your panel. And I always like to say we've been building autopilots now since 1978, so over 40 years. We have over 40,000 autopilots that we've shipped. So when it comes to GA autopilots, we know what we're doing. Our dealers are right there. They've been with us the whole time, and it is not difficult to find a dealer experienced in Stec autopilots. With that, that's really all I have. I did not have 200 slides. I know you were looking forward to that, but any other questions Doug or I could answer?
Mike, this is James Coleman. I'm an owner of a 400 model, and we do have a 3100 on order, and we were told possibly that it would be in by the end of January. Obviously, that date's up in the air. Out of curiosity, why was the PA24 not certified with the third axis?
It was based on our 40 years of business. We just did not sell any yaw or very few yaw dampers to that type of aircraft. Another one like a 182, we did not certify the yaw axis because there just hasn't been a demand for it.
Okay, I knew my father was going to ask me that question, so I thought I'd pose it to you to give him an answer. Thank you.
And I'll jump in here and say, from flying the thing, from flying the 400 through this test project, it doesn't need the yaw damper. It flies amazing with it. Coming in, we had some weather the last few flights, and we were shooting ILS approaches with, at altitude, about a 45 knot direct crosswind. And then, it was gusting 25 to 40 knots and getting down to 20 to 30 knots closer to the ground. And it flew the ILS like it was on rails. I mean, it was just glued to it. So it really doesn't need the yaw damper.
That's good to hear, Doug. We're upgrading to the 3100 from the 55X.
Sweet.
Hey, Mike, it's John Stark. How are you?
Hi, John.
I was just going to say, in the 37 years I've been doing this, I've put in a few yaw dampers and a few Bonanzas, a very few. Other than that, to single engines, just they don't sell ever. I mean, I've put in maybe 2 yaw dampers, I think, in some, V-tail Bonanzas kind of really neat because they have a little fishtailing going on.
Mm-hmm.
I've put it in a few. Honestly, I think it's because the guys just A36, and it's an expensive airplane. They just wanted it because it was an option, but most of them just don't need it. That's my 2 cents. So I'm with you on the not needing the yaw damper.
Yeah, it's interesting because the yaw damper is certified in the V series V-tail Bonanzas with the 3100.
Yeah.
And if you go all the way back to ST001, which was Stec's first certification as 60-2, it wasn't a V-tail Bonanza, and it did include the yaw damper.
That makes sense.
So, yeah, we've kind of understood that for a lot of years.
And I we have a couple of participants who are on via their phones, and that means they can't see the questions and the responses in the chat window. We usually handle that by just having me or somebody read off the questions in the chat window and the answers. So Doug and Mike, do you guys want to play query and response so that the folks that either don't get to the chat window for technology reasons or who are dialed in via their phones?
Read them off. We'll answer them as best we can.
Alrighty, so we've got a question. I'm just going to pop up to my top, which starts about 10 minutes in. We'll skip the what should Pete rename CJ? Shall we nominate and take a vote and go on to here we go. Will the Aspen Pro Max send air data to the 3100?
Yes, it does. It does that digitally via the AirInc 29 or AirInc 429 bus that will interconnect them. The current Aspen has that same interconnect, but as I mentioned, the current Aspen, the way it's configured, does not output that indicated airspeed label. All of the labels are available on the Pro Max, so it's all the functions are available.
And the Pro Max, as it stands right now today, the Pro Max will act in the same manner as the Aspen EFT Pro 1000. So it'll have those same limitations of needing to set the targets on the 3100 and I believe you have the lack of the indicated airspeed and envelope protection until that 3100 unlock is available. Once that 3100 unlock is available, you'll have full functionality. You'll have the two-way communication between the Aspen and the 3100. You'll get flight director command bars. You'll get everything without the need for additional hardware, but that is only going to be out for the Aspen Pro Max. The EFD 1000 is not able to have that software unlock because it's just restricted by hardware.
That's pretty slick. And before I go on to the next question, can you guys discuss command bars at more length? Because we do have a lot of Comanches that are still either running on nothing or have automatics, et cetera, that just that they were created and that fly great, but there were no command bars then. So do you want to talk a little bit about what they are and how they work?
Sure. So command bars, it's kind of a personal preference. It really depends on if you're used to flying with them or not. As far as, so the command bars display on your primary attitude indicator, they'll display what the autopilot is doing or what the autopilot is telling you to do if you have the autopilot in flight director only mode. So if the autopilot is not engaged, but flight director is, and you've got it following a GPS flight plan, you'll get some little roll steering bars on there. They'll come up, they'll tell you, you know, if you need to pitch up, pitch down, go left, go right. So if you're hand flying, especially if you're hand flying an IMC, it's a wonderful tool to have, especially if you're used to using it. If you're not used to using flight director command bars, if you've never used them before, it's not necessarily something that you would miss, especially when you've got a wonderful digital autopilot that can fly your aircraft perfectly. The flight director command bars don't make a difference in the performance of the autopilot, but they do really come in handy when you're hand flying an IMC. So as far as the Aspen is concerned on there, because the Aspen is really the only one where there's the optional hardware required to get flight director command bars. So that comes into people's decision-making on whether they want to spend the money to get the flight director command bars. That's hit or miss and total personal preference. Most of the people who have never flown flight director command bars before don't go with the additional hardware to add it. Most of the people, if they're prior airline guys or they're used to flying flight director command bars, most of them will decide to add the extra hardware to get the flight director command bars. If you've got the Aspen EFD 1000, you're not going to the max. Flight director command bars, total personal preference. The big one is adding the extra hardware to get the indicated airspeed mode and therefore envelope protection. I'd say probably 90% of the people add that, with the exception being if they're planning on upgrading to the Pro Max and they say, you know what, I'm fine. I know I've got that limitation for right now, but it's going to be fixed with the software update. So as long as I know that I don't have indicated airspeed mode and therefore envelope protection, I'm fine because I'm using vertical speed for the climbs or pitch mode for the climbs and using my power to manage my airspeed.
Cool. Just a question, is there a downloadable, well, on the 55 versus the 55X, I'm just going to quickly respond. Doug confirmed that yes, it's the same price for the 55X and the 55. It's $9,995, which basically is half the price if you already have trim, or $11,495 if you need to add auto trim. Anything, Doug or Mike, you want to add?
No, that's absolutely correct. The upgrade is the same price for the straight 55 or the 55X.
And Doug and Mike, do you want to clarify for those of us who have 30s and 50s, or the 2-axis autopilots, and then the 20s and 40s, the single-axis autopilots?
Basically what it is the 20 and 30 are very similar. The 20 is the system 30, but without the pitch axis. Or I should say a 30 is the 20 with the pitch axis. So a system 20 is a roll axis autopilot. It has a single servo. It's a little more expensive to upgrade to the 3100 because now you have to add the pitch servo as well as the pitch trim servo. Same thing applies to the system 40 and 50. The 40 is a roll axis only. The 50 is pitch and roll. So they're a little bit more expensive to upgrade because you're actually adding 2 servos to the system.
Mm-hmm. From any questions from anybody who's looking to upgrade from 20, 30, well, any of the legacy Stecs? Do you want to just, I'm just going to give everybody a chance to just unmute and dive in.
Yeah, it's Mike Ellis. So I got an Stec 50 with altitude hold. I do not have electric pitch trim.
Okay.
So I'm in the 11,495 category then is what you're saying.
11,995.
11,995. Okay.
Yeah.
With a 2-year warranty, is that right, guys? As long as Mike gets his request in time?
That is
on
correct.
the servos?
Yeah, no,
Even
it's
though
already,
servos are...
it's already in. And the servos that are in there are like 25 years old, so they're coming out to get rebuilt regardless.
Well, the good news is you just saved yourself money.
Yeah, exactly.
The rebuild is covered by the factory for free. Is there a downloadable operator's manual?
Yes, the POHs are available for download from our website.
So everybody should go to what?
Genesis-aerosystems.com and look up the 3100 under products, and that POH is available.
Good. Beautiful. And then from Don, I have trim. Does this come with new servos or use the old ones?
It depends on your system. If you have a 55X with auto trim and you're upgrading, the 3 servos that you have installed will remain and they will get a 2-year warranty. If you have a system 30 or a system,
it all picked up?
You have to
You're
add.
dressed anyway.
Yep, we've got an open mic, sorry.
We have to add the trim servo. So in that case, you're getting a new controller plus the new trim servo. Yes.
Beautiful. Go ahead.
Nope, you're muted there, Doug.
I'm sorry, I muted somebody.
Okay, there we go. Sometimes over the years, depending upon what system you have, there could be a part number change in a servo. I know, for example, on the Bonanzas with the 60-2, it's got a different roll servo than the 3100. And in those cases, the servo is sent in and is swapped out for the correct part number at no cost to you as well under the warranty.
Cool. This is impressive because these servos, the fact that you're still standing behind servos that are 20, 25 years old really speaks well to the quality of your servo engineering. So a question from...
Yeah, especially given the fact that, as Mike mentioned, we've got over 40,000 autopilots out there in the wild, all having on average between 2 to 3 servos. You can figure that's 100,000 servos. And our servo repair station consists of one person who doesn't work weekends, and turnaround time is pretty darn quick, usually a week.
I don't know about everybody else, but I'm impressed. Well done. This is a bit of an unusual question for Comanche Zoom, but here it is. Does Stec Genesis have any autopilot certified for the Piper Aerostar 601P?
That is our next project, in fact. It's going through installation right now. Doug will be graduating from the PA24 to the PA60. It's probably going to get started, I would guess, in the next 6 to 8 weeks. We should be flight testing that. So yes, we will have the 3100 certified in the Aerostar.
And then hopefully right behind that, the PA3039.
Absolutely.
All righty.
And as with every other project, since that one has not wrapped up yet, if you get your order in for the PA 60 for the Aerostar series, if you get your order in now, you'll still get that extended warranty offer for those as well.
Just a private message just came in just to confirm to everybody, and the message for Genesis. Although you guys have been clear all along that you're actually test flying in the 400, everybody, the 400 is covered in the STC for the Stec 3100.
Absolutely.
We've got, yeah, people aren't sure, so the 400 sometimes get left out, and you know the great news is they're not just not left out, they're front and center. The copy of the, let's see, how many hours to upgrade from an Stec 40?
From a 40 or a 50? From a 50, I've been told it's about 50 hours. If it's a 40, which means there's another servo to install, I would probably guess 60 to 65. But put a big asterisk by that, because it's always important that you go talk to your avionics shop to get an accurate installation quote. Aircraft are different, and sometimes panels need to be rearranged. There's other things that need to be done. So that would be like a minimal time in a very clean airplane. I'd put it that way.
It would also depend upon what other work you're having done at the same time. If you're having, a GI 275 or an Aspen installed, or if you're going through an annual and the airplane's apart, some of the labor can be kind of double dipped on there while the airplane's already apart. So every situation is different. And just as Mike said, I want to stress the importance to make sure you talk to a shop or 2 or 3 and get quotes for what it would cost in your airplane to have that install done.
Right, that 50 hours, use that as kind of a rough order budget. So before you've talked to anybody, you can kind of have a figure in your head about what it's going to cost, but the actual cost is something that does need to be looked at.
So I'm gonna throw this in there just because I know I'm going to get asked. Let's just say we show up with an in-rig airplane and a freshly redone panel with perfect wiring, that thing that never exists, and say I want to install, either do an upgrade or install a fresh autopilot. And I've just installed my Avidyne or my Garmin 750 that I'm going to use to drive.
I would say stand by what we've been saying. Talk to the shop. Every shop is completely different. It totally depends upon your aircraft, where everything's located, and also depends upon shop's experience as well. So that's why I would recommend talking to multiple shops and say anything that we say on an install quote would be very ballpark, and the best number is going to come from the shop that's going to do the work.
Very good.
It's typically around 2 weeks for a brand new install if you're just going to do a pitch and roll. you're going to add another day to something like that for doing the pitch trim, as you've got a cord to run to the yoke, and so you've got to mount a switch for the manual electric trim. Then you've got to put in an actual pitch trim servo, so that does add some time. So I would say on a new install, and I've probably put in, I don't know, 50 or 100 Stec Autopilots through the last 30-some years, and it varies, like they say, from the airframe. But I'm talking about a typical single engine airplane. You're going to run probably a week on this upgrade that they're talking about. So 40, 50 hours is what Mike said. That's what I'm doing them for. So that's probably going to be about right, because all we're really doing on a 50 upgrade, like I'm doing, and Mike Ellis and some of the other people are doing, is putting in a pitch trim servo, and then doing the rest is mainly panel work and stuff. Now, I'm not trying to make it sound like it's nothing, but it's going to take about a week, give or take a couple days. So that's going to be for an upgrade. But a fresh install, you're going to have to take everything apart. You're probably looking at least 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
One critical step that does need to be done on any install, and this is stressed multiple times, including with a neon highlighter pink piece of paper that comes with the install kit, is those existing servos do need to be checked to make sure they're operating to spec. There are, as somebody mentioned earlier in the call, there's Autopilots. I think it's Mike Ellis, mentioned that he's got 20-year-old servos in there. So they need to be checked, especially since we're going to service them if they need service. So that's a critical part of every install, is to check those existing servos to ensure they're operating to spec and the cables are at the correct tension.
Yeah, and you want to do that no matter what, as far as the cables go. You want to check the rigging very first thing when you get a brand new install. And if you're dealing with older servos, it's a relatively simple process, but you do have to check startup voltage. Startup voltage is going to tell you when the motor starts to run, and that will tell you really generally the health of the servo. If the motor's not going and starting up at a low voltage, say right at 1 volt or less, that typically means that there's a buildup of that dust from the brushes, or it's just worn out. And that you want to go ahead while you've still got 2 years and get it overhauled at that time. So he's absolutely right. If someone's going to put this thing in a quick manner and just kind of get you out the door working, and they don't notice a weak servo, then you're the one who ends up losing on that.
CJ, I got a quick question.
Fire away.
Okay, it's Mike Ellis again. Hey, so I got 2 G5s in mine, and I understand we cannot get command bars on it. What is the difference between the GI 275 and they can get it and the G5? Is it a software issue where we might receive a software upgrade at some point in the future that it'll work, or is there actually a physical unit limitation?
It's in Garmin. It's in Garmin's hands. It's in their software. The GI 275 is basically a mini G500 600 TXI broken apart and transmitting all its data over AirInc, and is designed using the same labels as the bigger, more expensive G500 600 TXIs, and it's designed to accept external flight director commands. The G5 is not designed to accept external flight director commands, because the G5 is the brains essentially of the GFC 500 autopilot, which the GFC 500, you get the controller, but the G5 is what's actually doing the processing behind that. So as it stands right now, currently, no, you would not be able to get flight director command bars on the G5 unless Garmin was to make a change to their software that would allow for an external flight director input, if that's possible.
It's really a matter of the way the instruments were designed is really what it is.
I don't think that's even going to be upgraded at any time either. Honestly, it does have flight director capability for the original experimental version had it, but I don't think it's going to happen in the future, because it gets most of that information through the CAN bus system. Of course, now you're talking about that architecture, taking someone like Stec, taking all their data, putting it on a CAN bus system. That's just never going to happen. So I wouldn't look for that. Everything's ran through your GAD 29B, but I think all its capabilities is pretty much sewed up. And if you look at the connector on the back of a G5, it's got 9 pins, I think. There's just not a lot there. It's got an RS-232 input, a very basic one. So it is very unlikely that you're going to see an upgrade through for a G5 to get you flight director. So
Everybody, that's John Stark speaking. And so he's done, as you probably heard him say, he's done 40 or 50 of these installs. It's amazing to have you here, John. And just to quickly read off the answer from the chat, since it's in the middle of this same conversation about installs. John mentioned that typically he quotes out 40 hours to upgrade from a System 50 to the 3100, total about 15,000 installed. And I wanted to read that into this because so many people are trying to figure out like, well, you know, I want this, how do I afford it? You know, what do I need to budget? So that's incredibly helpful. You know, obviously as everybody's being careful to say, your mileage may vary and it depends on the individual installer and the individual airplane, but it's so helpful to have some sense as to what our ballpark is. So I just want to thank you and acknowledge, you know, who's speaking, and this is a voice of experience.
yeah, that's what I came mainly on this Zoom call for. I pretty much knew most everything they were saying because I install these for a living, but I was hoping to kind of help out if anybody had any questions. You know, this is what my shop charges. It's not necessarily what your shop's going to charge, but to keep them honest, you should be somewhere in this neighborhood. One of the big things with the 3100 that's a little bit different than all the rest of the Autopilots, and everybody needs to know this, especially anybody here who's got analog equipment, that's where you're going to run into some issues. If you're going to try to get a typical 6-pack, and you're going to want to have those fancy features like a altitude pre-select, you're going to want to at least upgrade to like a G5, preferably get a G5 HSI, because you really want to get all the functions that you can out of this. And if you don't, you would have to get a special altimeter that has a little barrel corrected sensor in it. And that's ridiculous because it's like $4,000 for this type of altimeter. So no one would do that. You'd be better off getting like a at least a G5 put in. So my opinion is if you're going to go and get something like this fancy Autopilot, at least have yourself something with maybe dual G5s, an Aspen, whether it's a Max or not, or, you know, some fancier systems. So.
Yeah, the GI 275 is not that much more than the G5, and Garmin, after their Comanche Zoom, actually sent us 2 documents which are posted with their Comanche Zoom. And one of them is the comparison, features comparison between the G5 and the GI 275. And so for those that want to drill down, which I think is a lot of people, if you go to meetings.northeastcomanche, all one word, meetings.northeastcomanche.org, you'll see a list of the Comanche Zooms. And if you click on the Garmin specific Comanche Zoom for Autopilots, there's 4 links before you start the replay of the actual presentation. The bottom link is the document they sent that's the comparison of the G5 and the GI 275. So it was kind of nice that they built us this little prezo. I think they then fitted into their own literature. And that's extremely helpful because they have diagrams, but mostly they're saying, you know, here's what's shared between the two, and then here's what's unique to the GI 275. Pete, are you, I'll try to post that link into the chat window later on.
That same links are available on the northeastcomanche.org website on the Comanche Zoom page. You could go down to the link to the particular Zoom and click on that. You'll get the page with all the links to get to all the different things about Garmin's.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What Pete said is the other way to get to meetings.northeastcomanche.org, but Pete's exactly right. They both direct to the same place. Tim asked with the built-in. Adam, can you post? Just stand by. I'm just reading Tim's question in. With the built-in, I think he meant ADHRS. Does that remain as primary if the display, whether GI 275 or Aspen, has its own ADHRS system, or would it be And Tim, I'm going to ask you to unmute if you can, because it looks like it says, or would it be a back? And I'm not quite sure what you mean.
I know where he's going with this one. The 3100 uses its own internal MEMS unit for the AdaHars as primary. However, the Autopilot needs two things to run. It needs air data and it needs attitude information. It supplies its own attitude information. However, depending upon what you've got for an EFIS, if the EFIS stops putting out air data, then that can cause the Autopilot failure.
Mm-hmm. Tim, does that answer your question? If not, just post in. I think you're micless tonight. As far as getting a copy of the presentation, normally all presentations with the permission of the presenters are posted with the audio video recording. Mike and Doug, do we have your permission to post this presentation with the Comanche Zoom?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Super. Yep. So Rick, it'll be there. Again, you can go to northeastcomanche.org and click on the Comanche Zooms link, which will be next to the fly-in schedule. Or you can go to meetings.northeastcomanche.org, which is a shortcut into the Comanche Zooms area. And, you know, it'll just, if you do this quickly, it'll be next to the most recent Zoom posted, and the preset will be right there. From Alan, will the command bars come in the chicken wing style or the needle style?
It's the V.
Okay.
There's not.
Well, I'm not going to make it right now.
Yeah, it comes in the V style. That's the only one that it currently puts out.
Well, coming up.
Okay. And then Joe had a question. Would my Century 1 servo have to be replaced?
Yes. A unique thing about autopilots is an autopilot is a system, not a component. And all manufacturers' autopilots, whether it's us or Century or King or Garmin, it doesn't matter. The system is certified with all their own components.
Joe, any are you clear on the answer? You can either unmute or just if you have any additional clarification, just drop a note into the chat window. From Steve Hansen, he was wondering about the PA30. Do you want to just quickly summarize the Twin Comanche potential for having the Twin Comanches covered?
Well, like I said a couple slides ago, we are starting to collect pre-orders. When we get 15 pre-orders from PA30 or PA39 owners, we will put that certification on our schedule. It's kind of as simple as that. Our extended warranty offer applies to all pre-orders for those for the Twin Comanches as well. So if we can get that accomplished by the end of March, sometime in, I'll say, the middle third quarter of next year, you should have new autopilots available.
So is 15 a
beautiful.
hard number?
So about Q3 next year? Go ahead.
Is 15 a hard number, Doug, or will you accept a lesser number to start the process?
I'll kick that over to Mike, but yeah, 15 is the hard answer.
We've been told that many times by our company management. So,
well, gotcha. Thanks. I know that my pre-order is in there, so I'm just kind of hopefully somebody else will step up to the plate and put their name in the hopper.
Well, I'll tell you, we hope so too. We sell autopilots for a living, and I'd love nothing more than to have it certified in the Twin Comanche.
And I'd like to get a chance to fly the
Well, given the number of
PA39 as
twins
well.
that have them.
Oh, trust me, Doug. I've already offered that to you in an email through Mike. So if you're looking for a twin, you saw it there. I'm more than willing to give mine to you to make it happen.
Basically, what will happen, Russ, is as we get closer to the number, like say somewhere north of 11 or 12 orders, I'll start looking around for an STC candidate, because, and I have no doubt you have a beautiful aircraft, and I'll just say I'm sure it would work, but we do have to get our ODA, our certification group, involved to make sure that the aircraft is equipped right, that maintenance is done. There's a few steps we have to go through, but as we approach the required number of orders, I'll start looking around for a candidate aircraft.
Can't beat that with a stick. From Ken Schaffer, are all the PA24s covered? And the answer to that is resoundingly excited yes, including the 400s as well as the 260Bs and Cs. But I actually have a question. The Turbo Cs, is there any PA24 that is not in any conceivable way that is not covered?
No.
Everybody's covered.
PA24 on the planet is covered.
That's a good statement. All right, we can take that one. For those, now here's something that I heard ahead of time from a couple of people. So Will, you're asking a question that I've heard from 4 people. For those of us who aren't yet in the market for the 3100, not quite yet, what's the best way we can revamp an existing installed Stec Autopilot? I run a 20 with a 60 PSS and I'm having issues with my PSS. Should I focus on the servo?
You need to really take it to a qualified Autopilot shop, because it could be a number of things. If, you know, I mean, all of this stuff is electronic, and electronics does malfunction, and it's pretty hard to guess how it's going to break. But very often, there could be as many mechanical issues as there are electronic issues. So it certainly could be the servo, but a good Autopilot technician needs to take a look at it. A couple of things you can do is, number one, if you are having a problem with your Autopilot, take good notes as to what it does and how it behaves, because the more you can describe the problem, the easier it's going to be to troubleshoot. The other thing, and maybe this goes beyond, if you do have an Stec Autopilot, probably the best thing you can do is use it. It's a mechanical device, and if you don't use it very often, I mean, think of this: hang a bike in your garage for 3 years, and then pull it down and take it for a ride, and tell me what sounds it makes. You need to use it to help keep it functioning correctly.
Hi, this is Pat. Hey, I was curious on the Aztec 30 I have.
Oops, it looks like you muted there, Pat.
Well, we will stand by one, Pat, while you're getting unmuted. Just a quick, the chats do get saved along with the audio and video, and they are all posted. Can you just quickly readdress, this was a direct message question that came in the middle. When can we expect the kits to ship? And Mike, you addressed this briefly in the beginning, but particularly first or second quarter of 2021?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, by second quarter, absolutely. We're still working through the final things. It takes, right now, like I said, we're beginning our PMA phase, that's parts manufacturing authorization, which is typically a 3 to 4 week process. But with the holidays coming up, I would guess you could add a couple of weeks to that. You know, so that's just kind of a guess on my part. I haven't seen any dates. I would have to guess that well into the second quarter that we'd be shipping these systems, but that was the ARG on that on my slide.
So well in the second quarter sounds safe. And are you thinking that there's a possibility that late in the first is that the range?
Yeah, that could be. But you know, and I hate, nobody has given me a date, so it's really hard for me. I'm just kind of guessing based on our past STC processes. So.
It's 2020. Everything happens in 2020.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is from somebody who's currently flying a PA24 260 with an Stec 55X. And at the moment, he said the electric pitch trim is extremely slow. Is this adjustable to a faster trim change rate?
No, the servo is set as part of the STC process. The speed of the servo is specified. Okay, so that's a fixed number. If your trim is working slow, it needs to get looked at. It could be a number of things. If the question I'd ask is, does the manual pitch trim seem to work okay? If that's the case, it could be, and Doug, you can chime in, it could be like a slipping clutch, possibly.
Yeah, there could be a number of things going on. If it's not operating correct, I'd definitely get it into a shop to have it checked out.
Right. Seems pretty quiet.
DJ, you're on mute.
CJ's muted.
Yeah, I've got a question. Since
Sure.
I don't have electric trim, what do I lose if I upgrade but don't get the electric trim? What happens?
You can't upgrade. The 3100 has to have automatic trim.
Okay, thank you.
So you lose nothing. You actually
And
get
I just want to recognize
automatic
Lee.
electric trim.
Oh, sorry.
So you lose nothing. You're actually going to end up getting automatic electric trim
Right.
and the manual electric trim switch.
That's sweet. Just going to stop for a moment, and Lee's had his hand up. Lee, if you can unmute, feel free to jump in.
Lasso is back up, so we can just see it.
They can hear us. You're funny.
Alrighty. And Corey, you're unmuted. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, we were talking about where, the standard Comanche yoke is the loop. How's the trim tab actually mounting on that? How are you guys handling that, Mike or Doug?
It's tied in with the existing trim system. So in this 400 that I've been flying, it's got the overhead crank trim. The trim switch is mounted on the yoke, and you can move the trim forward and back, and you'll actually see the trim knob moving.
So it's just somehow mounted to the upper left side of the yoke somewhere?
Correct, yeah.
I haven't seen a photo of how it's done yet.
Yeah,
Doug,
and it'll depend upon which yoke you have.
Doug, he's talking about the D yokes, not the ram's horn, the old D yoke.
Yeah, the D yoke.
Not the ram's horn. So Corey, on the D yoke, there's a plate right underneath the top part of that's going to have your push to talk, your automatic the disconnect, and the trim switch is going to be there. One of the reasons I bought ram's horn was I don't think that's very ergonomic, but it goes on a plate on the bottom part of the top of the D.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been wanting to get the Rams for years. That's a better way to go. But yes, I already have that plate for my current Stec Autopilot, so that makes sense that would work. I'm just wondering how you did it. So thank you.
Yep, and that's what's in the STC ship is the D, and it works great.
Cool. Thank you.
Alrighty, so I'll just continue down the question list. And just Gary Pettis posted, but normally I would kind of keep quiet, but it's such a great post. He's like, give John Stark your business. He's given me great pricing and has always answered my questions, no matter how dumb they are. So, John, you've got that's quite the recommendation. From Russ to everybody, resend your request through your avionics shop to Stec. That's what he needed to do to get the Twin Comanche pre-order in. So to get your pre-orders in for any of this, but particularly for the Twin Comanche, so we can get that project rolling, it goes through your avionics shop to Stec. From Chris McGuff, he's got a newly overhauled baro-corrected altimeter for sale. And he said, make me an offer. So that's a pretty key thing for those that want to keep our 6-packs. Chris, do you want to unmute and just quickly let people know how to get in touch with you? And if not, you can stick, we have a new, basically buy, sell, and trade section in the Comanche Zoom invites. Go for it.
Sorry, it took me a minute to find my mute. Yeah, I have it's a newly overhauled United Instruments, and it has the 0 to 5 volt barrel correction output. And I'm not going to use it. So if anybody in the Comanche population needs it and wants it, I'll accept any reasonable offer. I think it even still has a warranty on it.
That is an awesome offer, given that those really, I did look them up. They're like $4,000. So
yeah, I knew they're very expensive. You can usually find, if you can find a used one, they're usually about $1,500, which is about what I paid for that. But I'm willing to. I'm not going to use it, and there's not a lot of demand for it. And if somebody needs it, I'll be glad to help.
I have a question. Yeah, I apologize if this has already been answered, but the GPS steering, is that kind of like on the 55X, 2 pushes of the heading button, or is it something that has to be done through the G5, for example?
Neither. With the 3100, it will automatically sense the GPSS signal and use GPSS when available, and you're flying a GPS flight plan or GPS approach. And then if you're flying a VOR, then it'll just use standard. But you don't have, there's no double button pressing, no pressing 2 buttons at the same time. If you've got an Aspen or a G5, you don't need to select GPSS through the screen. The navigator is wired to the 3100. It automatically senses the GPSS and will go into that mode when commanded.
Well, how do you switch back and forth between heading and GPS steering?
When you want to fly the heading bug, you hit heading, and then you move the heading bug. When you want to fly the GPS flight plan, including GPSS, you hit nav.
Okay.
And then it'll arm that.
Okay, I got you.
The 3100 automatically senses what mode your navigator is in, whether it's in GPS mode or whether it's in VOR mode.
Okay.
Yep. That was a good question. I think a lot of people had that. How about integration with the UAvionics AV30s?
Our team has been reaching out to them. It's something we'd like to see. I know their initial plan was just to do integration with the legacy autopilots, and then they're planning on bringing in integration with digital autopilots down the road. I believe there's going to have to be some sort of a converter box made similar to Garmin's GAD29B for the G5. But that is something that we have been reaching out to them to try and put together a collaboration on.
Cool. John Stark, did you want to weigh in any more on that?
No, I mean, I've talked to them, and basically what right now they're just kind of spending all their time working on the old analog interface just so that it can work as a real HSI. A lot of people think that it's either an artificial horizon or it's a directional gyro. It does have very, very limited HSI features. It gets an RS-232 from a let's say a Garmin unit, for example, and it'll give you some limited stuff, but basically they're trying to tell you it's not an HSI. They're working on doing this box that they're talking about, but their first box is not going to answer this either. If they have it where it will hook up to a like a KI-525A, which is a King HSI system, if they do that, if they give that capability, then Stec will most likely be able to hook up to it, because that's a very familiar interface for Stec. So that would get you a heading bug, but I wouldn't expect anything in the short term from them on full features.
So more likely to be a new device. And then a question, where are they? So on the PA30 count, for those that have done their pre-orders on the way to 15, did you say you had 4 at the current time?
Yeah, I'd have to look. I think we have 3 or 4.
And if you're wanting to put a pre-order in, or if you've already told your dealer to put a pre-order in, make sure you've reached out to Mike so he has your name and tail number and can verify that we have your order in. I know dealers are very busy and have been for quite some time. So it's easy for something to slip. So just make sure that you've reached out to Mike if you have an order in, so he can confirm that we've received your PO.
And what's the best way to reach out to Mike?
My phone number and email address are at the start of this presentation.
Perfect.
Or if you go to the Genesis Aerosystems website, our contact information is there as well.
All right. And Jim Walcott, do you want to just jump in with your trim question directly? Because what Jim's pointing out is his manual trim's working fine. He just has a very slow automatic trim on the Stec 55X that they're flying with the 260 right now. And
we answered a similar question just recently. It could be a number of things, a slipping clutch in a servo, but if the manual trim seems to be working correctly, I would say that needs to be looked at by an experienced tech.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. I would say get to a shop. I don't know, John, if you've got any more input or suggestions here, but if something's not working right, get it to an Stec dealer that's got experience with Stec Autopilot so they can take a look at it and ensure everything's working as designed.
What I'd be curious about is, so if you get in there and you take your thumb wheel and you're just sitting on the ground and you put your thumb wheel forward and you watch it spin, and then you do it backwards and you watch it spin, you stop that, you go ahead and put the yoke in about a middle position, you engage the autopilot, and what's going to happen when you pull back, it's going to sense that and it's going to start trimming. When it does that, compare that speed with the way it was with your thumb, and I'd be curious to see what the difference is there. That would tell us at least something. It should be the same speed, give or take, if you're pulling on it pretty hard.
I'm going to whip through a couple. The older Johnson bar flaps are included, all of them. So whether you've got electric trim or whether you've got electric flaps or manual flaps, those are all included. Somebody posting that they've got the 3100 on a different aircraft and a 55X on their PA30, and the 55X is great, but the 3100 is more capable. So that's a good recommendation. Can you explain the level button, the LVL button?
What the LVL button does is it brings the aircraft back to essentially straight and level flight. And it does that in kind of like 2 modes. If the autopilot is on and you press the LVL button, it'll drop out of whatever pitch and roll modes you're in and put you back into, you'll see roll and pitch on the display. And then after things settle down, you would need to re-engage the correct lateral and vertical modes. If the autopilot master is turned on, but the autopilot is not engaged, in other words, that light is not lit, when you press the level button, the autopilot will engage the servos and again bring the aircraft back to straight and level, and you'll see roll and pitch displayed in the windows. So the autopilot does not have to be engaged to use the level mode, but obviously the autopilot system needs to be turned on. In other words, the autopilot master needs to be turned on.
Neat. Can you talk about the GTN 650? And after that, it's open mic, but that's the last question from the chat window.
Yep, GTN 650, 750, those are all great. They work with the 3100. The STC ship has the dual GI 275s and a 750 in it. We've flown plenty with the 650. It's definitely a great interface and one that is certified with the 3100.
And at this point, jump in with your questions, folks. And thanks for those who use the chat window.
Doug, would you mind walking us through the Alt button and how to set a target altitude on the screen? For us G5 users, it's going to be on the screen of the 3100. Just the process.
Sure. So when you tap there's a couple different ways that you can go about this here, and it depends upon the interface. If you want to select the altitude, to pre-select your altitude, you turn the big knob on the select to move the big numbers, the little knob to move the little numbers, and you program in your altitude there. If you have an interface with a compatible altitude pre-select, like the GI 275, the 500, 600 TXI, etc., then you can use the altitude pre-select window on the EFIS to set your target, and that will transfer over to the 3100. So that would be arming it. So if you see the picture on the screen now, how it says Alt and then 12,500, that means that it's pre-selected. Anything on the bottom is you're armed. And in this mode here displayed on the picture, you're in a vertical speed at a 500 foot per minute climb up to the altitude of 12,500. Once it starts approaching the altitude, depending upon the closure rate, you'll see that VS at 500 turn into cap, letting you know that it's going into capture mode, and the rate of climb or descent will start to decrease, and then it'll level off at your pre-selected altitude. Now, one thing to mention on here was, as John brought about, on an analog system, you may not have the altitude pre-select if you don't have a source of a baro signal going to it for an analog system. The 3100 will still function, but you would have to manage that level off. So you would have to set 500 foot per minute climb rate, 1,000 foot per minute, whatever you want for your climb or descent rate. And then as you start approaching your desired altitude, you would use the up down knobs there to decrease or increase your closure rate on there. And then you tap Alt to level off at that current altitude. But as John mentioned, bring in a G5 gives you a little bit more functionality, some glass, and it would give you the altitude pre-select. We had a customer who had a 310 here that we were flying, and it was an analog system. He didn't have altitude pre-select. Once we gave him back the airplane, he said, okay, you're right. I need altitude pre-select. I'm going to go look into different options here. And I think he's probably going to end up doing dual GI 275s.
There's a really good question. The difference between a rate-based and an attitude-based system.
So the rate-based system is driven by the turn coordinator, and an attitude-based system is built on an internal attitude sensor that senses the overall attitude of the aircraft. It's a much more precise, digital, accurate system. You'll have a lot better performance with an attitude-based system than you would with something that's being driven by the turn coordinator.
And just to throw it in as an historical note, as I understand it, the original like Ultimatics, et cetera, used the attitude indicator. And so it's almost as if we've gone full circle. They were renowned as being more, as being smoother. And the shift to rate-based came because the sort of the fewer, the one less point of failure. But now with modern technology, here we are back to a smoother system that's also more reliable. Is that right?
Yeah, the digital attitude-based system is definitely the way to go. It's really amazing technology that's available for general aviation aircraft.
See, we're lucky to be alive and flying now. A good question from Tim. As a curiosity, do you know if it'll interface partly or fully with Dynan's Skyview HDS EFS system?
Not currently. That is another one where we've been reaching out to them to see if we can set something up. But their current programming language, kind of like we mentioned with AV30 there, it wouldn't allow for an interface. Not to say that it's not something that could happen in the future, but it's going to take a joint effort between us and them to get that going.
So just to throw this information in, I met with Dynan on this question, not the corporate guys from the left coast, at the Sun and Fun Holiday Fly-In. And they said in general, the air, and I asked this specifically, like they said, well, we've got the airing 429 and the RS-232 information. And I said, well, sometimes people do different things with how they're encoding that information. So from what you're saying, they've done some proprietary stuff that needs to be, shared with you so that there can be translation and free sharing of knowledge.
Yeah, our tech team and business development team have been in contact with them.
Mm-hmm. And can we help out by basically saying, hey, we really want this, or what can we do as pilots and owners to help you help us?
It couldn't possibly hurt.
Okay, everybody who's interested,
I mean,
start beating the drum for the Comanches.
Like Mike mentioned, we're in the business of selling autopilots, and that means I get a chance to fly it too, which is awesome. So we'd love to see the 3100 certified on everything with 2 wings and an engine, and the more systems we can work with, the more we can get the Autopilot out there to you guys. So we'd love the opportunity to make it work with everything available.
If anybody's interested, I can explain why there is a disparity between these systems. It's because they came from an experimental world. So you got Dynan came from the original Skyview is no different than the original G3X. They came from an experimental world, and basically what they did is they made everything pretty much proprietary. And if they worked at all with other autopilots, and some of them did, they used a standard AirInc GPSS signal going out of them, and that's how they mainly did everything. Now you start talking about putting them into these certified airplanes that have certified avionics, and even these new digital systems like this 3100, they just weren't designed for this. So anything that they did would have to, I think it'd probably even be a little bit more than just software. They may have to get another actual adapter, and whether or not they're going to be willing to do that or not is it remains to be seen. I think that's the reason why you're seeing these Skyviews and all these different airplanes, and you're wondering, well, they're so fancy, why don't they have the ability to do all this stuff? And it's because they're basically mostly proprietary systems. They were meant to work with themselves and themselves alone. And now that they're out here in a whole new area, which is the certified area, it's just going to take some time for them to tool up.
Good info. Can you discuss the menu, the MNU button?
Yep, as you stated, that's the menu button. That'll get you into some different pages on there. The POH talks about it. As Mike mentioned, the POH is available for free download on our website for anyone interested in learning more about the system, especially if you've got an order in, you want to start brushing up on some knowledge there before your new Autopilot shows up. But hitting the menu button and then turning the select knobs adjusts the brightness and contrast, and then the up down knobs adjust the brightness of the LEDs, and then pressing the Alt button when in the menu will flip the contrast between black on yellow or yellow on black.
Cool. And volume as well?
The volume level, you can mute the volume, but other than that, the volume is set by the installer during the install. That's something that we're looking at potentially changing in a future release, although right now I don't have any update on that.
So it's software, and at the moment it's not configurable beyond the initial setting.
Correct.
That sounds fixable. Adam, I think you had started to try to ask a question earlier.
No, I got a random phone call from somebody and I muted myself. I wasn't asking a question.
Okay. From the Canadians though, is this available in Canada?
Yes, it'll be available worldwide. Some countries, it might take, there might be a slight delay in getting through certification for specific countries, but it will be available worldwide.
And this will include the special requirements for Europe and the UK?
Yes, we have a lot of systems over in Europe, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, everywhere.
Can I ask what minefields have you ran into with the current EASA CAA split over here?
We have a team that handles all of that, and that's outside of my realm, but
I wouldn't like to be in that team right now.
With our almost 40-year history in doing this, we've kind of figured out how to work through all those problems. So we get that done fairly efficiently.
I put in the invite for this, and so did some other people, that there is no company that has more expertise at building and getting Autopilot certified and upgraded and troubleshot than what's now Genesis. It's just extraordinary. So we're the 978th. If the Aerostar is next, they'll be the 979th. You guys are just about to be batting 1,000. That's really amazing.
Technically, the Aerostar is 982.
Oh.
Yeah, and we've got twin commanders of Pilatus in between there. Yeah, there's more than just that.
Wow. Do you anticipate the PA3039s being available both as a 2-axis or a 3-axis option?
Yes.
Okay.
I would highly recommend going with yaw though on any twin. Just go with yaw. You will want it. You can add it later, but it will save you money during the install. It would be the same hardware price. It would be the same price to do it up front or do it later, but where you're going to run into it is the labor. It would be a lot more adding it on later. Most twins that have gone 2-axis end up wanting the yaw and go back on and add it later. So it's best to just do it up front.
Mm-hmm. There's a question. Is it possible to get the LVL, the level button, in a different color for, say, non-pilot passengers in case of some incident with the pilot, where they could say in a pre-brief, hey, should anything happen, push that, special color button? It's a great question.
Yeah, we have talked about that internally, and we're looking at different ways of potentially doing that.
I just want to not to be, I guess I'm taking advantage of my gender here, but, and I'm all right, I'm about to be completely inappropriate, but we host a lot of fly-ins, and obviously, more between 7% of pilots are women, which means a lot of times the person in the right seat is, anyways, I guess I'm completely off it, but a lot of women have come to me and said, boy, we would really love to have a little bit more information about what to do if John over there has fish, as they said in the movie, and keels over because they ate the wrong thing. And we can have the discussions all we want about how seldom that happens. And I happen to be a female pilot flying with a non-pilot, and that desire is there from the male non-pilots as well. So I just want to support the question. It's a great one. And it will make a lot of the people who are not as happy in the right seat as we would like happier. And that only helps us all as pilots and airplane owners.
Mike, I don't remember. Do you have a pin that will support an external level button?
That I don't know.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll look at it while you guys are doing this. I'll log off here for just a second, or at least mute or something. I'll look it up, and if I can find it in time, I'll let you guys know. So if you can, it's not going to be anything different than like a push to talk switch. So it'd be a wire coming out, go to a switch, and then you can make it any color you want. You could put it anywhere in the cockpit that you want. It would be similar to the True Track, which is now the Bendix King Aero Cruise 100, I think they call it. But they have an external switch. I'll look it up while you guys are doing what you're doing.
Neat. Very cool. Thanks, John. And that ends the questions, I think, in the chat window. So everybody, it is literally an opportunity to ask your upgrade, installation, etc. questions. And I love the idea of an external button. Just a note to those who joined later that the video will be up and available tomorrow. So, at this point, you can go ahead and jump in with your questions if you'd like, or if there are things that you missed, feel free. But also, a recording is going to be available at northeastcomanche.org. And so just Mike Ellis was kind enough to put the ram's horn yokes, the part numbers for all the different types.
Yeah, this is Pete. When I get off of the Zoom tonight, I'll get this thing formatted into the proper thing for the video, which takes about an hour. I will then upload it, which takes another 20 minutes or so. And then I'll go home, get to my old computer, which has the website access, and build the connection on there. Hopefully by tomorrow morning early, it will be available.
Oh, that was one other thing, CJ, I brought up in the last meeting. If you do have different yokes than the D yoke on the 250, 260, you got to make sure you tell your installer so they order the correct trim switch. Like mine is it's going to be a Cheyenne 2 yoke, so it needs that trim switch.
Oh, good point, Mike. Thanks for putting that in. This is sort of a last call. We're going to wrap up finally on almost an on-time thing. I'll stay, the meeting will stay up and we'll still be here for when John comes back with the answer on the external button. But Doug and Mike, the support you've given us is enormous and really so much appreciated. I have a question, which is what coming in as pilots and owners to an install, what can we do to make our install process as efficient as possible and to make sure there are as few surprises as possible? Having your airplane in rig is the one thing that came up consistently in the early Autopilot Zooms. Is there anything else we can do?
In rig is huge, making sure that that's taken care of, making sure that any required maintenance is taken care of. Make sure that if the shop runs into a delay during the install, that you're not going to be bumping into an annual or required inspection is also huge. And then other than that, I'll kick this over to Mike since he interacts with all of his dealers and see what type of things he's heard from his dealers.
I mean, that, as far as a specific airplane, that's really what they want. That the airplane is, I'll just say, fit to work on when you bring it in. John might be a better guy to ask that question to when he pops back on, since he's a dealer himself. But yeah, the aircraft, as far as the Autopilot goes, having the aircraft in rig and having the flight control system, operating properly is very important.
That and just making sure that you've covered your plan with the dealer before you get started. Make sure you've got a list of exactly what you want and how you want it done. Because if you start making changes during the install, changes happen. But if you start making changes during the install, it can really bind things down and slow things up.
And another question just came in by text. Are there any GPSs that this does not work with?
I had a request to interface to the King 770, and we couldn't, to the best of our knowledge, we haven't done an installation with it, and we weren't sure how that would work. That was the only one that, I'll say of the newer GPSs that I've run into.
And then, of course, the Dynon Skyview at the moment is a question mark.
Something like that. But, you know, like all of the Garmin GNSs and GTNs work, Avidyne equipment works. So.
Beautiful. Well, with that, I think we are, go ahead.
I don't see any level button, unfortunately. There's the manual that I looked at, unfortunately, doesn't give a connector complete pinout, so it doesn't show you all the pins. It does show you probably all the STC pins, so that kind of leaves you in a gray area if you wanted to use it, even if they had it. But I didn't see anything for an external level button. And as far as what to do before you bring it in to have this upgrade, this is really important. Probably half of you guys know this and half of you don't. I get it all the time because I'm on the other end. The panel fakes you out a little bit in a Comanche. It makes you look like you have more room than you have. So on the bottom of the avionics rack, which is where most people are going to want to put this, there's very limited length behind it. So there are crisscrossing cables and things like that. So don't get into a situation where you got your heart set on this, okay, well, I've got this here, it's never been used. I've got this 1.5 inches or 2 inches or however much room you need. It's probably going to be somewhere around 1.5 inches. And then you get there and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I have nowhere to put this because there's not enough room. Where I thought I had room for it, there's not. So please do yourself a favor, contact your shop. If you've got one of these on order, if you're going to put one of these on order, make sure that the room that you think you have, because I'm telling you, 50% of the people, it's probably going to be that high, are going to get to the avionics shop and say, okay, put it here. And they don't probably have experience and they're going to say, okay, great. And then somewhere along the line, you're going to get that phone call. And that phone call is going to say, we tried to put it there, but it won't fit.
It ought to be at the top of the stack, like big airplanes.
Yeah, but then of course you got to be careful too, because if you put it in the bottom stack and move everything down, is that bottom radio going to be long? It seems like everything's long these days. There's very few things that are short as far as panel mounted things. So just be warned. It's just something to kind of put in the back of your mind, because probably half of you guys right now that have these on order are probably thinking to yourself, oh, wow, I didn't even think about that. And it doesn't sound like a big deal until you get it there and you literally don't have room.
I was measuring that because of having just done a panel upgrade, and John's right. The cross control cable is down at the bottom of where most of us have our center stack radios, cross right there. And it's about, if I recall, 4.5 to 5 inches depth there. If you've got something really shallow, it'll go there, but anything deeper than that won't fit.
How's this box compare in size to the STec 65? Doug?
Well, the 65 is a totally different format. So the 65 is that ATI cutout. If you're talking about a 55 or a 55X, it's a very similar. It's obviously a little bit taller, but the depth, and the depth, of course, is really what we're looking at right now. The depth of all of them are pretty long. I see someone put up a little text there. I'm guessing 12 inches or something like that, 13 inches, pretty long.
Yeah, the unit itself is 9 inches in depth behind the panel, but then you got to have room for the connectors too as well. So yeah, by the time you get the connectors and everything else in there, you're looking at least probably 12 inches of space you're going to need on there. It's similar in size to the 55X. The computer with the panel cutout is 6.15 wide by 1.47 tall. So it's similar in size to a 55X.
So then, John, your options are remote transponder and run the transponder through the GTN 650, or what I'm going to do is where the old radios used to be on the right-hand side, I'm going to put my transponder over there, and then drop my stack and put like Steve said, put the Autopilot on top of my switches.
You know,
What other
funny that-
options do you have?
It's funny that you just said that because we're really apples to apples on this. I know you're a plane because I watch your videos, and I've seen that you have a very similar setup. So you're going from a 50 to a 3100, exactly like I am. And guess what? I have the exact same problem that you're having. So what I do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out my GTX 345. I'm going to get a 45R, and I'm going to remote mount that somewhere. That's going to free up exactly the right space for me. So it's easy for me because I own an avionics shop. So I get sweetheart deals and everything. Don't have to worry about labor. You guys, it's a little bit different when you say, oh yeah, just get another 345R. It's just like $5,500. So, you know, it's a lot of money. So I get that everybody can't do that. Unfortunately, Mike Ellis is right. You're going to end up having to do the best of two evils. So, you know, you're going to have to probably put it way over there on the right-hand side. Thankfully, if you do that, if it is a, if it's a Garmin to Garmin, you probably can remote it, even though it's a panel mount. If that's the case, then that's fine. So I don't know if that's what Mike has. I don't remember. What do you have for a transponder, Mike?
GTX 345. So I'm just going to shift it over to the left side, on the left side of the panel, where the radios used to be in the original Comanches. I still got a tray there and everything it'll go into.
Yeah, and so you don't even need to ever lean over and access it anyways, because you can do that through the GTN that you have. So you're fine. You're doing basically the same thing I am. I'm just going to go ahead and make mine remote because I want a, you know, really, really clean panel, and because I can get it at, you know, reduced price. But if I had to pay for it like you, I guarantee it'd be going to the right-hand side.
I think at this point, I'm going to stop the recording, and now you're going to keep on going with the meeting, but I want to thank Doug and Mike for a tremendous amount of information and for the effort that they're putting into this. It's been terrific. And with that, I'm going to end the recording.
Thanks.